Tonight, religious liberty on the line. The Supreme Court allows parents to use a state student aid program to send their children to faith-based schools. Plus, another hearing on the Hill investigating the January 6th attacks on the Capitol. And digital detox, giving children a break from screen time.
It's just across the board beneficial to these kids.
And helping kids find freedom from the grip of technology. All this and more on Faith Nation. A Supreme Court win for religious schools and new questions over the separation of church and state. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm George Thomas. A religious rights ruling from the Supreme Court today. According to Chief Justice John Roberts, a Maine tuition payment program, he says, penalizes the free exercise of religion. 3 of the more liberal-leaning justices wrote strong dissents to the opinion. Caitlin Burke joins us live from the Supreme Court. Caitlin, can you tell us a little about the tuition program in question?
So this case, Carson versus Macon, was a challenge to a Maine law which provides school-aged children the right to a free public education. If public school's too far away, the state will pay their tuition to the private school of their choice, unless it's a religious school. Today, the court said that violates the First Amendment's free exercise clause. George?
I'm a little curious. That decision was backed by the court's 6-member conservative majority. Caitlin, I'm curious, what was the dissenting opinion in this case?
Well, Justice Stephen Breyer said the court is focusing too much on that free exercise clause and not enough on the establishment clause. But the strongest opinion came from Justice Sotomayor, who said the court is dismantling the wall of separation between church and state. She said, quote, "In 2017, I feared that the court was leading us to a place where separation of church and state is a constitutional slogan, not a constitutional commitment. Today, the court leads us to a place where separation of church and state becomes a constitutional violation."
There are still a few big rulings we're waiting on. Caitlin, can you give us a preview of what's still to come?
Well, the court has 13 cases still to weigh in on. We are following 4 specifically. Now, Dobbs, of course, is the case that could result in Roe versus Wade being overturned. There's also New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which deals with the Second Amendment. Then Texas versus Biden, which is an immigration case. And then there's one more religious liberty case, Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. Now, all of those decisions are expected to be handed down by the end of next week. George?
Thank you, Caitlin. It is indeed going to be a very, very busy week next week at the court right there. Here with us now is Leah Patterson, counsel for First Liberty Institute. Leah, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Faith Nation. So does today's decision have wider implications for Americans outside of the state of Maine looking to use state funding to send their kids to private religious schools?
Well, I think it does, and it's good to be with you. So what the Supreme Court did today is reaffirm what it's already decided, that when a state creates a school choice program, it cannot exclude religious options. That violates the free exercise clause.
Some pretty strong language there from Justice Sotomayor that today's Supreme Court is leading America, in her words, quote, to a place where separation of church and state becomes a constitutional violation. What's your response to that?
Well, I'll just point out that the words separation of church and state are nowhere contained in the U.S. Constitution. What it does contain is a commitment that the government not discriminate against religious exercise.
Justice Breyer joined the dissent, claiming the High Court's decision doesn't pay enough attention to the Establishment Clause separating church and state and too much attention on the Free Exercise Clause protecting the freedom of religion. Does he have a point there?
No, I don't think so, because the court has already decided over a decade ago that it does not violate the Establishment Clause to allow religious schools to participate in a school choice program, because it's the parents who are deciding where this money goes, not the state.
Okay, and right before we let you go here, Leah, Caitlin, my colleague, just mentioned at the Supreme Court that the next big religious liberty case over former high school coach Kennedy's right to kneel in prayer after games. I'm curious, based on the hearing on that case and today's outcome, are you expecting another win?
We are hopeful, and First Liberty is just so grateful to be waiting on two wonderful Supreme Court cases this term.
Yeah, and obviously you're keeping close eye on next week. It's going to be a big week as the court wraps up its session, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, terrific. Leah, as always, thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. Appreciate your comments.
My pleasure.
You're most welcome. Folks, the January 6th committee held their fourth hearing today, focused on former President Trump's role in pressuring officials to reject their state's 2020 election results and declare him the winner. The hearing today featured in-person and video testimonies from Republican election officials in states like Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan, dealing with what the Trump campaign asked them to do in order to get the former president, to get him to win the election. For more on today's hearing, we're joined by my colleague, White House correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, tell us what's going on.
Well, George, today, Republican and Democratic election officials testified that their lives were threatened, all while Trump's lawyers knew that what they were asking them to do was not legal.
Stop the steal! You're a threat to democracy. You're a threat to free and honest elections.
The uncertainty of that was what was the fear. Like, are they coming with guns? Are they going to attack my house? I'm in here with my kid. You know, I'm trying to put him to bed. And so it was, that was the scariest moment, just not knowing what was going to happen.
It has all gone too far. It has to stop. Mr. President, you have not condemned these actions or this language.
Witnesses testified that their home addresses and phone numbers were being shared online, leading to thousands of threatening text messages and phone calls, routine protests in front of their home, which many witnesses said they avoided, for some of them, for months. And they claim that this all served as a dangerous precursor to what happened at the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah. Abigail, many, as you know, of the witnesses testifying today were Republican election officials. Did they investigate the Trump claims of election fraud?
These witnesses, in many cases, made it very clear that they supported Trump. They wanted President Trump to win the election. So they did investigate these fraud claims, but they said they simply just could not find any truth, any claims of fraud in their state. And they were telling Trump's lawyers that, and they were telling them that they could not do what Trump's campaign was asking them to do to reverse the results of the 2020 election in their state.
Want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Because I knew that we had followed the law and we had followed the Constitution. And I think sometimes moments require you to stand up and just take the shots when you're doing your job. And that's all we did. You know, we just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short. But I had to be faithful to the Constitution. And that's what I swore an oath to do.
And election officials testified that they repeatedly asked the Trump campaign for proof of election fraud, with one witness testifying that they recalled it Rudy Giuliani at one point saying, "We've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence." George?
Okay, terrific. Abigail, thank you so much for your insights there. Folks, we head overseas tonight where tensions are cooling down after a potentially dangerous incident Monday between the United States Navy and Iran's military in the Strait of Hormuz. This video, released by the Navy, shows an Iranian speedboat rapidly heading towards a U.S. warship. The vessel operated by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The Navy ship sounded a warning and fired off a flare before the speedboat changed course. The incident taking place as tensions are high over Iran's program to enrich uranium to weapons-grade levels. Coming up, folks, TV, iPads, and smartphones. Boy, oh boy, those screens are everywhere. Coming up, how parents can help their kids with a little digital detox. That in a moment. Welcome back to the broadcast. Do you ever feel like you can't put down this thing right here? Well, you're not alone. More Americans now say they use their smartphones way too much. American adults under 50 are more likely to always keep their phone with them and to experience anxiety without it. That's according to a new Gallup poll. Most say smartphones have made their lives better. Only 12% say their handheld computer phones made their lives worse. But 6 in 10 Americans say they use the ambiguous pocket tablets too much. Well, children in America spend a huge amount of their time staring at these screens and other phones and electronic devices. For some, it's an addiction that could follow them into adulthood. That's why one mother took some very, very drastic step and pulled the plug on her children. Jenna Browder brings us the results of this family's digital detox.
It's the day and age we live in. Technology rules, and sometimes we just need a break. And that's especially true for kids.
We had noticed some behaviors in our kids after screen time that we didn't really like.
Just ask Molly DeFrank, mother of 6, all under the age of 12.
And it wasn't until we fully pulled the plug on all of their screen entertainment cold turkey, we gave them a break. And it wasn't until we did that it was like removing a filter from our kids. We finally got our kids back. And ever since we have made that decision, I've been helping other parents do the same thing.
Her new book, Digital Detox, the 2-week tech reset for kids, begins by taking parents step by step through a 2-week cold turkey detox for their kids. Talk to us a little bit about some of your strategies to, cut back on screen time for parents. I think a lot of parents are kind of at a loss. They don't know what to do here.
You're absolutely right. Most of the parents I help are great parents of amazing kids, and they're already working to monitor their kids' screen time. They're taking away time for bad behavior. They're adding some back, and they're finding it still not working.
Molly says it comes down to brain chemistry. Too much screen time creates excessive levels of dopamine in the brain, the kind that can be addicting. And for kids, it's a problem that can follow them well into their adult lives.
What you're actually doing is you're resetting your kids' dopamine levels, because when they're scrolling, when they're playing, when they're tapping, their dopamine levels in their brains are excessively high. So real life can't compare. That's why they're complaining of boredom. But when you give them this 2-week window to reset those levels back down to real life, you're giving them time to rekindle a love of real life activities.
Things like playing outside, arts and crafts, reading and writing. The second half of the book helps parents come up with a long-term strategy, using their observations from the detox period. So how often should families do a detox?
And it's going to be unique for every family and child. So once you kind of get that calibrated right for your kids and your family, you should be good for a while. But there have been families who it's gotten out of place again and they've done another detox. And this is great. In fact, a lot of these Silicon Valley engineers and CEOs, they'll give themselves dopamine breaks too. So this is it's science-based, and the results are really, the proof's in the pudding.
Molly says for most families like hers, it's not about eliminating technology, just making sure it's in its right place.
And most parents find, pretty much every parent who's reported results back to me has said that their kids get along better, they find new real-life productive hobbies, and they're happier. Their mental health is better. It's just across the board beneficial to these kids.
Her own kids are a testament to that. In just 2 weeks, she says they were free from the grip of technology. Mood shifted, creativity exploded, and they learned how to entertain themselves and enjoy life without screens. And yours can too. Molly says it can be difficult at first, but giving your kids a break from technology is something that will pay off for them and the entire family for years to come. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Colon cancer is on the rise in young people. Now you can test for the deadly disease at home. Find out how when we come back. Welcome back to the show. It kills more than 50,000 Americans each year. Colon cancer is on the rise, especially among younger people. The good news, a home test kit for early detection is now available. Medical reporter Lori Johnson brings us the details.
Record numbers of young people are being diagnosed with colon or rectal cancer. According to doctors, that's largely due to lifestyle choices such as a diet high in red meat and processed foods, obesity, lack of exercise, and smoking. While this cancer affects all groups, African Americans are as much as 40% more likely to die from colorectal cancer than others. Fortunately, that could be changing.
Here at Trinity Baptist Church, a predominantly Black congregation in Columbus, Ohio, parishioners learn how to prevent early death from colon cancer so they can serve the Lord on this side of eternity as long as possible.
Assistant Pastor Janet Shepard's family has worshiped here for 5 generations, which can be common in these pews.
This is our home and has been our home for a long time.
What's not so common here is Janet's decision to get a colonoscopy, a procedure that can detect actual cancer or precancerous polyps.
Some people say, if I don't know about it, I don't have to deal with it, but you will eventually have to deal with it.
Janet's procedure revealed 3 precancerous polyps, which were removed during the same colonoscopy. Without that screening and discovery, the polyps would likely have grown into tumors, possibly even taking her life.
Had I missed that opportunity, who knows what would have happened? Those polyps would have remained. We don't know if they would have turned to cancerous. They're precancerous, but they would have remained in my body and had the potential.
During worship, Janet passes out blue colorectal cancer awareness ribbons and shares her testimony, hoping others will follow her lead.
When you talk about it from the pulpit, when you talk about it in your circles around church and that type of thing, people listen, and it's like, wow, if that happened to Reverend Jan, if that happened to whoever, maybe I need to listen to what my doctor's saying.
I said the first miracle he did was at a wedding when he turned water to wine.
Senior Pastor Victor Davis believes it's totally appropriate for spiritual leaders to give medical advice at church.
It is not just a place where you come in fellowship and worship, but it's also a place where you receive resources that you might be able to go back and serve the community better.
He adds that leaders of Black churches in particular carry a responsibility to protect their congregation's health.
The African American population in many cities oftentimes is the population that does not have access to the information that is needed so that they might get the health care that they need.
When it comes to getting a colonoscopy, there can be roadblocks, such as the procedure cost, no transportation, someone to accompany them, or the ability to take off work. As a potential solution, Ohio State University started a program using home test kits, not to take the place of a colonoscopy, but to cheaply and easily identify those who should make it a priority to get a colonoscopy and those who may wait. When you take a home test, you put a stool sample in this little container and mail it to the lab, which can detect microscopic traces of blood in the stool, a red flag for colon cancer. Some Trinity members are receiving the tests and urged to take action if needed.
This is an opportunity to receive and be tested in a private, uninvasive way. And that if it comes back positive, you can take the next step. This is a preliminary opportunity for you to get control on your health and know what's going on in your body.
Dr. Sabankar Chakraborty, a program developer, says the goal is to motivate those in the earliest stages of colorectal cancer to get a colonoscopy, rather than waiting until they possibly experience symptoms such as visibly bloody stools and other unusual bowel activity, abdominal pain, or sudden weight loss.
And once they are diagnosed at later stage, then the risk of death is high. For example, if you got diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, there is a 90% chance that you will not survive for 5 years. But imagine if you get a colonoscopy and you get precancerous polyps removed, you have suddenly increased your chances to 100% survival.
Dr. Chakraborty says people not involved in the program can order home tests online. He reiterates those who get a positive test should schedule a colonoscopy, adding the often dreaded PrEP isn't as bad as it used to be.
The good news is there are several what we call low volume PrEPs, so you don't have to drink as much as you used to do before.
And there's little to no pain.
So there are sedation techniques with where you can be just completely asleep, pretty comfortable, and when you wake up, you're all done.
So while home test kits and colonoscopies aren't anyone's idea of a good time, doctors say they're definitely worth the effort because they could save your life or the life of someone you love. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And finally tonight, a New York dad had his one wish this Father's Day, to be able to walk with his son. Ricky Caputo was paralyzed after a motorcycle accident 4 years ago. But with the help of a spinal cord stimulator and his wife by his side, he beat the odds, accomplishing lots of firsts like playing golf, flying a helicopter, and welcoming his son Jack into the world. But his biggest accomplishment yet, he shared with his 10-month-old son. Ricky's wish came true at a recent therapy session, walking, taking his first steps together there with his son.
You know, if anybody could get anything out of this, it's that really anything's possible.
So cool. Ricky's ultimate goal is to keep up with his son without the help of equipment, but he's taking things one step at a time. Folks, that's it for this edition of Faith Nation. From all of us here from the headquarters of the Christian Broadcasting Network in Virginia Beach, Virginia, have a great rest of the day. See you tomorrow.